Olá, o programa Cidadania de hoje vai ser um pouco diferente. Nós vamos ter uma entrevista aqui bilíngue. Eu vou perguntar em português, o nosso convidado, o Toby Mendel, que é diretor de uma ONG no Canadá, que cuida de direito e democracia no campo das mídias e da imprensa, vai estar respondendo em inglês. Mas você acompanha aí, nas legendas, toda a nossa conversa. Mr. Toby Mendel, muito bem-vindo ao programa Cidadania, nós agradecemos aqui a sua presença e inicialmente eu gostaria que o senhor nos desse uma visão de como a liberdade de expressão no Brasil e na América Latina é vista a partir do seu país.
Maybe I will answer more a little from the perspective of international perspective, because the Canadian perspective is not. I work internationally, and so that's more the way I look at it. And let me perhaps first talk about Brazil. I think that what I have seen here, and I've worked here a little bit and done some research here and written a paper on recommendations for Brazil. I think you have a very strong private broadcasting sector. It's very diverse, producing good quality programs, at least in some parts of it. I would say that's quite a strong part of your system. But public broadcasting, community broadcasting is a little bit weak. And I would say the regulatory framework, the legal framework for broadcasting is very outdated and not much oriented towards public interest obligations. So in my country, for example, and in many democracies, strong democracies, broadcasters are expected to do something in the public interest. And that sort of obligation is a bit absent from your system. So I would say that's a weakness.
O senhor está no Brasil convidado para falar num seminário que vai tratar da regulação das mídias. Todas as vezes que se fala em regulação da mídia no Brasil, é compreendido por alguns setores da sociedade como censura. Qual é a sua opinião sobre isso?
Yeah, let me maybe talk a little bit from the perspective of UNESCO standards, because I'm here working with UNESCO. And UNESCO standards are international standards based on international law, based on international guarantees of freedom of expression. So I think from the perspective of censorship, quite relevant. I think it's rather simplistic to talk of regulation as being censorship. For example, it's very necessary to have regulation to allocate frequencies to broadcasters. Without that, you couldn't even have a broadcasting system, and nobody will call that censorship. What I think is more important is to look at how the regulation works. If, for example, the regulation is controlled by political bodies and is used for political ends, then I would say, yes, that looks a little bit like censorship, and certainly that's against international law. If, on the other hand, as in my country and as in most democracies, you have an independent regulatory body which is overseeing the regulatory system and it's applying rules which are, as I mentioned before, in the public interest, which are democratic in nature, well, then it's not censorship. So it really, to talk about regulation as a whole being censorship, it doesn't really make any sense. What you have to look at is who is doing the regulating and what's happening within that regulation, and then you can start to say whether that is or isn't in line with international law and therefore censorship, we could say.
Atualmente, nosso debate principal no Brasil é sobre a criação dos Conselhos de Comunicação Social. Esses conselhos estão previstos na Constituição Federal e na Constituição de vários estados da Federação. Mas assim que um estado, que foi o estado de Ceará, aprovou a regulamentação do seu Conselho Estadual, até a Ordem dos Advogados do Brasil veio a público dizendo que qualquer regulamentação é uma agressão à liberdade de expressão. De outro lado, os setores que defendem o Conselho dizem que o que há no Brasil é uma liberdade da empresa e não da imprensa. O senhor concorda com esse ponto de vista? Qual a sua visão?
Yeah, I was here a couple of months ago and spent some time in Brazil, and we did a pretty comprehensive research into all of the issues affecting freedom of expression. But I think this phenomenon that you're talking about now is quite recent. Anyway, we didn't really study it so much. So I can't comment on it because I don't know, for example, what those councils are going to do. As I said in my previous comments, whether something's censorship or not is not a question of whether it's a regulation. It's a question of what kind of regulation and what it's doing. You know, it's quite okay for state bodies, for example, to do research into the media to see how much media coverage of their state is in the national system, or, you know, they might want to know about that. Amazonia, for example, might like to see how well covered its issues are in the media. This is a very legitimate thing for the state to do. If the state government is trying to interfere with editorial freedom, okay, well, that is censorship. So on that issue, I would really need to look at what these things do in more detail to answer that. But on the question of, you know, is regulation allowed or not, or is it press freedom or no interference? You know, it's far too simple and I would say strident, just simply to say regulation is censorship. In every country in the world, you have regulation. We have to look at what the regulation does. I think that there is a certain attitude in Brazil or a practice or a culture perhaps that is very hostile to regulation, even though that regulation might be in the public interest. Under international law, and I believe under your Constitution, of course, I don't know what your Supreme Court would say, but I think looking at the text of your Constitution, I think regulation of the media in the public interest, for example, to protect children, it's right there in the Constitution, to impose quotas for independent production, for domestic production, for local production. These elements are right there in your Constitution, so I'm sure that they, depending how they're done, if they're done in a very heavy way, but if they're reasonable, these kinds of regulatory rules imposed on the media, I think they must, and if done in an independent way, not in a politically imposed way, I think that they must survive constitutional scrutiny. So I think that, you know, maybe some people in this country are quick to call the censorship card without looking at the real substance. International law protects both the right of the speaker, the right of the media, if you will, but it also protects the right of the listener and the viewer. And those are very important. They're equally important under international law. It's quite an important point, I would say. And I think in your own Constitution, those values, although they're not written in the same way as international law, they're definitely reflected there.
O senhor acredita que essa talvez seja uma reação decorrente do próprio perfil histórico, estrutural da mídia brasileira, que é essencialmente privada e oligopolizada nas mãos de um grupo de meia dúzia de empresários que detém a imprensa escrita, o rádio, a televisão e também o cabo e a internet?
I think there are a number of different elements. I think that the regulatory system here, which, as you probably know, dates from 1962, the 1962 Telecommunications Code, it's very light in terms of imposing some obligations on the media. If you compare the freedom, if you will, or the liberty to do what they want of the media here compared to in my country, in Canada, but also in most of Europe and in democracies around the world. In my country, you know, the philosophy is you are having a public resource, you're having an airwaves, you're able to take this powerful position in society, and you need to give something back. There are some obligations on you. The media here have developed fairly free of any of those obligations. I would say those are public interest obligations. If I always want to put the caveat, if they're imposed in the right way. If we look to Argentina, for example, we can see a situation where they have imposed some public interest obligations, but with a heavy dose of political control and political abuse. So this is not the right way. But if you do it in the right way through an independent regulatory authority, then, you know, this is a different balance than what the media here are used to. Naturally, they don't want to be burdened by these additional public interest obligations. You know, I can fully understand from their perspective why they wouldn't want that. Nobody wants to have another obligation. But if you want a well-rounded democratic public broadcasting system, then I think these things are needed. But in addition to that, another feature of your system is very heavily developed commercial broadcasting and underdeveloped public broadcasting and community broadcasting.
O senhor acredita que o Estado brasileiro deveria fazer melhor o seu papel?
I think that the state has not fulfilled its obligation to the people to create an environment of public interest broadcasting involving more or less equally developed, the three sectors, community, public service, and private. Here you have huge private, but the other two are much smaller. I think it hasn't done enough to impose these obligations. So yes, and I think that the process that's at the conference that we were having today, the process that's going on by the Ministry of Social Communications, I mean, this is partly the government is now saying, okay, we're going to address this.
O cientista francês Dominique Volton esteve recentemente em Brasília e disse que os empresários da mídia não estão sendo muito inteligentes, porque se eles forem muito resistentes, eles poderão ter no futuro, em compensação, uma lei mais rígida, como acontece na Argentina e na Venezuela. Qual a sua opinião?
I certainly think that the media need to engage positively with this process. It is fundamentally about them. They're a key stakeholder in the process, and for them to stand outside of it, if that's what they're doing, I'm not sure that is. I know that they didn't attend the Confercom last year, but some of them didn't. But for them to stand outside would really be, from a democratic perspective, from a legitimacy perspective, would really be a shame. But I don't like to compare Brazil even to Argentina, and certainly not to Bolivia or Venezuela. As far as I'm concerned, the democratic structures that exist in Brazil, the media environment that exists in Brazil, the democratic structures including your constitution, your Supreme Court, the intellectual, the academic intellectual part of your society. I think that you have, you shouldn't be complacent about it, but I think that you have pretty strong structures of democracy in Brazil. I don't imagine what's happening in Argentina to happen here in Brazil. I certainly hope I don't come back in 2 or 3 years and I have to eat my words on that. But I don't think your government is behaving in the same way as the Argentine government either, and let alone Brazil and Venezuela is in a completely different space. So, but I mean, to move forward in a positive democratic way requires all the key stakeholders to be involved, and so the media should do that. But if they are standing outside, as I said, I'm not sure that they are, but if they are, then they will have to accept what comes, because you can't complain if you weren't involved.
Quando nós estamos falando em mídia, estamos falando em produtos culturais, em dinheiro, em faturamento. E há uma grande briga, principalmente entre Estados Unidos, a Europa, capitaneada pela França. Os Estados Unidos defende o mercado livre para os produtos culturais, cinema, televisão, e a França defende a proteção da produção local, nacional. Qual o futuro que o senhor aponta para essa disputa?
I should perhaps mention that Canada is also one of the very strong countries on the, as you put it, European French side, and I think the reasons for that would be quite clear. We sit right next to the United States, and we don't have the language barrier that you have. It's very, very easy for U.S. media. I mean, U.S. media are already huge in Canada, and if we didn't within the Canadian broadcasting system have very, very strong rules on domestic production, local production, independent production, this package of three, which is reflected in the very words of your own constitution, I think one of the strong parts of your constitution, I think our broadcasting system would practically not exist. So, it is, I think, essential for smaller countries, and almost every country. I mean, Brazil is not a smaller country. Still, it can be dominated by, especially the United States. And the United States is perhaps the only country, or one of the only countries, that looks at this from a different perspective, because it is not at risk of being dominated, and it has a commercial interest. I don't think that those rules are going to change very quickly within the context of the WTO. Because when Europe and other countries who are quite vocal speak out on these issues, that finds resonance with a lot of different countries. I think it will find resonance, for example, with Brazil and with, in Africa and Asia and across this region. So I have a hard time seeing those rules change. And to be honest, I think it's very important to protect your cultural industries.
O senhor ainda acredita, mesmo assim, que essa mudança não vai ser rápida quando a gente considera a presença das companhias telefônicas como um ator midiático?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question and a difficult question because, of course, telecoms is a very different thing and in its technical aspect, in sort of providing access to mobile telephony or internet or whatever it may be. It's not about a cultural industry. It's about, nuts and bolts and wires and, these kinds of things. But, of course, the relationship between these two industries is very close. I mean, I think your Bill 29, which is currently before your government or before Congress and the Senate, regulates this quite well. It provides an enforced separation, as I understand it, between essentially the content layer, which it divides into three parts, but we could call that as a package, the content layer, and the distribution layer. That's a mechanism which is employed in some other countries, and I think that's a very important way of keeping this thing clean, if you will.
Alguns críticos do projeto de lei 29, que regula, será a nova lei dos meios de comunicação, dizem que ele é um pouco pré-histórico e que não há espaço para ele no mundo global.
Well, I don't know what aspects people are calling prehistoric, but I think that some of the basic rules in it, it does impose some local content and some independent production quotas, for example, implementing the constitutional rules.
Exactly this point, exatamente esses pontos.
Okay, well, no, then I completely disagree with that. I think, and if that's prehistoric, then I would have to say that the whole of Europe is living in a prehistoric zone. In Europe, according to the, Audiovisual Media Services Directive, which is binding on all European countries, all broadcasters, private and public, are required to carry 10% independent productions. This is a rule that was put in place pretty recently. It's not prehistoric, it's important. I mean, I think, I don't know who is making these kinds of claims, but these things are about protecting diversity within the broadcasting system. They're about protecting the right of the viewer and listener to access something about themselves, for example, about the place where they live, and not just national, about, from hearing different voices through independent production in the system. These are core protections that go right to the heart of freedom of expression from the listener and viewer side.
Nós agradecemos a sua presença aqui no estúdio da TV Senado. Nós conversamos com Toby Mendel, ele que é de uma ONG canadense, o Centro de Direito e Democracia, que tem como tema principal a regulação da mídia e a liberdade de expressão. Se você quiser comentar esse tema, escreva para nós, entre em nossa página www.senado.gov.br/TV. A gente volta num próximo Cidadania. Até lá.